It's the appointed time, and if we have formed a quorum, so perhaps can we invite the administration in, please? The matters raised at the last meeting held on the 5th of January, the government has made a response, and the matters to be followed up and the government's response are set out in papers number CB3332/1415 bracket 01 and bracket 02. Please be seated, government officials. Those present today are Mr. Christopher Wong from the Food and Health Bureau Deputy Secretary and Ms. Cindy Lam, PAS for Food and Health. Mr. Alan Lai, Department of Justice, Dr. Michelle Young, and also Ms. Jin Chang. Mr. Wong, would you take us through the paper, please? Thank you. Or Ms. Lam to take us through the paper. In the last meeting on the 5th of January, the members have raised questions on several aspects, and actually the paper has been submitted to the members on the 8th of January. The first question is, in the last meeting, we still discussed the PIC and the IC, the ratio of vet and non-vet members on those two committees. We had a lot of discussion, and members are particularly concerned that if we keep the 2-to-1 ratio, how can we ensure that the PIC and IC members will maintain impartiality in handling complaints, and also whether the administration will have more non-vet members to make it 1-to-1 or 1-to-2, or the PIC will be constituted by non-vets only. So these are the concerns expressed by members in the last meeting. So in our paper, and also in the last meeting, we have responded. Well, put simply, under the existing arrangement, the PIC is formed by 2 VSB members, and one of them has to be a non-vet. And whether, in deciding whether to refer a case to the VSB, the PIC, well, constituted by 2 members only, will have to make a unanimous decision before a referral is made. And upon receipt of the referral of complaint, the VSB will then refer the case to the IC for handling. And the VSB itself, when it makes that kind of decision on whether to accept the recommendation by the PIC, well, the VSB itself is actually composed of 2-to-1 in as far as the ratio of vet and non-vet members are concerned. So in our proposed amendment, we propose that the PIC be made up of 3 members, and one of them must be a non-RVS. And this 2-to-1 ratio actually is the same as the VSB when it makes its decision. So in the last meeting, we also mentioned that based on past experience, and when dealing with complaints, we need a lot of expertise and knowledge in the vet profession. And normally, non-vet members will not be able to comprehend the cases easily or make a decision easily. So when there is a divergent opinion, a decision cannot be easily made. Now, we are having 2 members in the PIC, and actually most of their decisions are actually made on a unanimous sort of views. So if we have 3 members for the PIC, i.e. we have an additional vet member, more knowledge and expertise in the profession can be introduced in the decision-making process, and that facilitates decision-making. So all along, we think that this ratio 2.1 actually meets with the operational needs of the PIC. Now, as to how to ensure that the handling process is just and impartial, and the VSB now has an interest declaration system. When the VSB appoint members to the PIC or IC, every one to be appointed must declare his or her interest, and especially if an individual member has dealing with a certain case, has a certain interest with the person being complained against, the member cannot participate in the discussion or the decision relating to the complaint. And also, for the PIC member referring the case to the VSB for inquiry, he should not be participating in the relevant VSB decision on that case. So that is to avoid a conflict of interest. And, well, we hope to prevent a conflict of interest by doing that. Our view is that vets are professionals. They have their own expertise and training, and they are very much trusted by the public at large. And we hope to uphold the status of the vets, and we hope that the VSB members and also the assessors who will be dealing with complaints in the future would be exercising prudence when they deal with disciplinary offenses and cases relating to the profession's ethics. So we would strive our best to ensure that they deal with the cases impartially. Secondly, in the last meeting, the members also discussed that when the PIC is composed of 3 members, whether we should abide by the majority rule in making a decision or whether we should reach unanimous views when we make decisions. And members have requested that the government considers this point, and also members have suggested that in the assessment panel or panel of assessors, whether the ratio of vet to non-vet members be set at 1:1, and when there is a referral, should additional procedures be added to ensure impartiality. With regard to the composition of the VSB and also the election regulations, in the last meeting, we have submitted a paper on those aspects, so I will not repeat the points made. As regards the composition of the panel of assessors, and members of the BEC have suggested that the non-vet members be increased from 6 to 12 in number to ensure that the vet users' interests are upheld. We note that the members' concern is that non-vet members' views should be duly regarded or considered. In the last meeting, the members also raised whether there should be a unanimous decision among the 3 members before the complaints are referred or otherwise to the IC. So after that, we have carefully considered members' views, and we think that the members' suggestion may not fully meet with our objective of streamlining the procedures of handling complaints. But we agree that their recommendation has some merits, and that is that the PIC should reach unanimous views before referring the complaint cases to the IC. So towards that recommendation, we are plan to move a CSA. And the CSA is now set out at Annex A. So perhaps, Chairman, well, we accept the principle. Should we be dealing with the CXA later on? As I said, Well, we will deal with that later. Well, in that case, well, we deal with the CSA now. Appendix A, we are concerned about Section 17D. Originally, it says that the Secretary, upon receipt of the complaint, will refer the case to the PIC, and then the PIC will conduct preliminary investigation, and after that, will make a decision as to whether to refer the complaint to the IC to make an official inquiry. Here, at Section 17.3, we would delete that, and we will have 3A, 3B, and 3C. And 3A requires, or sets out that the committee may decide whether or not to refer the complaint to an inquiry committee. And 3B states that, however, a decision under Section 3A must be unanimous, i.e., the 3 members, 2 of whom are vet members and the third is a non-vet member, while the 3 of them should have a unanimous decision before it is an official decision. And if there is no unanimous view, then the committee must refer the complaint to the board itself. And then the rest of the section remains the same. So, and that is if the PIC makes a unanimous decision to refer the case, then that falls into 17.4, and it will notify the Secretary, and the Secretary must, as soon as practicable, send to the subject person certain documents, and including a notice of the referral and a statement of the substance of the complaint. And this, such documents must be sent by prepaid registered post. And also, if the committee decides not to refer the complaint to an inquiry committee, the Secretary must, as soon as practicable, notify the complainant of the decision. So this sort of reflects or embodies the member suggestion last time. And then we need to add in additional clause, and that is 17E, and that has to deal with the scenario where the PIC doesn't reach a unanimous decision, and it has to refer the case to the VSB itself. So this clause has to do with the VSB dealing with the complaints, and the wordings are the same as the last section, 17E1. i.e., if the PIC refers the complaint to the board, then the board can decide whether or not to refer the complaint to an inquiry committee. If the board decides that the case should be dealt with, then the Secretary must notify the vet complaint against, and it should send the notice of referral and a statement of the substance of the complaint. And the board decides otherwise, the same decision should also be relayed to the complainant. For the board, they decide by the majority rule. So this are amendments or CSAs made in response to the members' suggestions last time. If members don't have any further questions, the last point that was raised in the last meeting was on the arrangement for the election. And in the last meeting, we submitted a preliminary proposal on the election. And one point raised particularly by members is that we originally proposed that one eligible voter can nominate the maximum number of seats for that election. And that is, if 6 seats are provided for, then they can nominate a maximum of 6 people. And during election time, they can also elect a maximum of 6 people or vets as well. And last time, the Bills Committee had great reservation on that proposal, and they suggested that the government should constrain or limit the number of persons nominated and voted to 1 instead of 6. So the election will be set out in another piece of legislation. So when we submit the draft legislation, we will fully consider the recommendation made by the Bills Committee.
Saying that you will fully consider the points made by members, that is, a vet can only nominate 1 candidate. I think we're inclined to accept members' views, but the election does not just involve decisions of the board. So if the Secretary could, during the second reading of the bill, also state that the election regulations will be changed, then I'm sure there will be less resistance from members. I think these were the main issues that we discussed last week. So we understand that the election is not a subject that we need to discuss this time. So you do have, time. So perhaps you can talk to the Secretary. If he's willing to stand up and make a statement, then I'm sure members will be willing to accept the recommendation. I think we're inclined to accept that proposal, but to be safe, we will also go through the procedure once again. We need government. We'll certainly consider this proposal. We will certainly, talk to the Secretary about this proposal. There are other minor technical amendments on page 5 of the document. Early on, when we went through the clause by clause, I have reported to the panel that early on the Assistant Legal Advisor gave us a comment regarding certain technical aspects of the bill, and we will, as we propose in the paper, add to the definition of the assessor 17B2, section 70, the description in 17B2. And in the title we would add the referral to the assessors. And thirdly, in 2C1D and 2C1D, we've also added the referral to the referral. Other than that, when we went through the bill again, we agreed that in Schedule 1 to 1B, we will make a minor amendment to further clarify the meaning. And all these are just technical amendments. And such amendments are now listed in Annex D. Chairman, that's all I'd like to report to the committee. Any questions from members? Vincent Zhang. Chairman, having heard the administration's response, I think if all the members of the ESB comprise mainly of registered veterinary surgeons, we believe that this cannot fully ensure that the service or the clients, namely the pets and those who receive the service, will not be guaranteed of quality service. We've also received submissions from pet owners stating that the BS there's too many RSVs on the board and that the ratio should be 1-to-1. The government is now prepared to make an amendment so that just in case there is a complaint, the complaint will be referred to the PIC first. The PIC will look into the complaint to see whether or not the matter should be referred to the IC. And the government is now proposing that the composition of the PIC will be changed so that the ratio of 2.1, instead of the requirement of a 2-to-1 ratio, they are now suggesting that the decision should be unanimous. If the ratio were 2-to-1, and if you have any unanimous endorsement of a decision, namely the PIC believes that the complaint should be referred to the IC. But what happens if there is no unanimous decision? In which case, then the matter will be referred back to the VSB. If the matter is referred back to the VSB, again on the VSB, it is predominated by the registered veterinary surgeon. So there is no way to protect the interests of the complainants. So there's no guarantee that the grievances will be dealt with. I hope, therefore, that the Bureau will consider moving an amendment. I would like to suggest that you do this. First of all, I think the non-RSV members should make up at least 50% of the members of the VSB. I also think that the panel of assessors, you're now proposing that for these, complaints that are not dealt with expeditiously, you want to expand the size of these panels. I'd like to suggest that the panel of assessors could be further expanded, and you can incorporate more non-vet members so that you get a larger pool of members. I have a proposed amendment here, and I hope the administration will consider to adopt my proposed amendment. And if the administration is not willing to do that, then perhaps the chairman may decide whether we need to call a meeting and that members can move the amendment. I'm sure they've already considered this already. At the last meeting, we had a very lengthy discussion already on this. Ms. Lam or Chairman? There are two issues here. First of all, we are now proposing that the 12 members appointed by the administration, we are now changing that number, and the new composition of the VSB is such that we now have a ratio of 1-to-1 regarding the number of vet members and non-vet members. So I think we've already said many times during previous discussions. Today we are just maintaining our rationale for maintaining the current ratio. I think we've reiterated this point many times already. Given that the main function of the VSB is to ensure the sustainable development of the profession, and having made reference of the regulatory structure of other professional bodies and also experience of overseas jurisdiction, we believe that it is appropriate for us to maintain the current ratio. So the administration, therefore, I'm afraid, has to maintain our position. The second amendment is about the panel of assessors and the number of assessors. If I understand members correctly, the proposal now, the change now is that the maximum number of RSVs should be increased. If we maintain the 2-to-1 ratio, then the ceiling, if we increase the ceiling, the number at the ceiling, our preliminary view is that we will not object to that, so long as the 2-to-1, given the 2-to-1 ratio, if we are going to have more RSVs who can be selected by the board, the VSB, then I would not have any objection to that in principle, and will not object. Chairman, I'm grateful to the Bureau for the amendment to Section 11. They're saying that they will not object to the amendment to Section 11. It's good that you appoint more assessors, and you can, set up more PIs, more ICs to hear the complaints. Otherwise, there will be a huge backlog. I think during our earlier discussion, we said that during the PIC stage, there could already be a ratio of 2 to 1, that is 2 non-vet members and 1 vet members. But you insisted that it is okay for vet surgeons to conduct the preliminary investigation, and we accepted your proposal that the PIC should make a unanimous decision or approval. You say that the PIC must make a unanimous decision before the matter is referred to the IC. But if there is a non-vet member object, then what happened? You say that the matter would then be referred back to the board. But the board, once again, is predominated by the registered vet surgeons because of the 2 to 1 ratio. And if the pet owners have a lot of grievances, there is no way for them to get have the grievances redressed. There is no way for them to make a complaint. So I'm suggesting that there are now 6 members who elect among each other. We're not going to propose that we change that. Previously, you had 6 appointed members. Now you have 6 members to be elected. You still need to appoint 6 members. Why do you need to retain those 6 positions, since 6 members are going to be elected anyway? Why don't I propose that of the 6 positions, you retain 3 of them? 3 of them should be vets, and then you allocate the other 3 seats to non-vet members? This way, the number of non-vet members can be increased from 5 to 8. Registered vet members can be reduced from 6 to 3. You add another 6 vet surgeons to be elected among the vet surgeons. Then registered RSV will be 9, non-vet members 8, and there's 1 more post who is to be filled by a medical practitioner. So you're going to have 9 plus 9 plus the chairman. So at least on the VSP, just in case you have a tie and you fail to reach a decision, then the chairman can exercise his casting vote. I think that would be more fair. You can't say that you would disagree to this or that. We all know that you are all very smart. You support the proposal in relation to the panel of assessors because you can appoint them, or you can, to do the work, or they could be simply, idling. I don't think the general public can accept that. Thank you. Ms. Wong. Thank you, Ms. Chang, for further clarifying her point. We understand Ms. Chang's the rationale. We fully understand that. But I've already said earlier that we've already considered the ratio between vet and non-vet members. And what we need to think about is that the VSP has to shoulder this major responsibility, and that is to ensure the sustainable development of the profession. We need to consider the overall, the fact that many of the work of the board has to do with the development of the whole profession. And bearing this in mind, we have to also look at the way in which other professional bodies deal with the problem. And we've also made reference of the practice of regulatory bodies regulating veterinary surgeons in our overseas jurisdictions. And we believe that maintaining the present system is the best option, and that the current ratio is the most appropriate ratio. As to whether or not the board will give the impression that it will not give the public the confidence, and that is the views of the non-vet members will be ignored. So at the last meeting, we said that at the PIC level, if a unanimous decision could be made, then it can ensure that the non-vet members' views will be fully taken into consideration. If he doesn't agree to a certain decision, then the matter will be referred back to the board. So you already have something like a review mechanism there in place already.
And also, with the new arrangement, i.e. in the legislation, we state clearly that the PIC must reach a unanimous decision, and that will allow the non-members' views be taken into full account, and that there is an additional layer of review. Then I think this arrangement has its merits, and the public can have greater confidence that the procedures are fair and that the non-vet members' view is given full consideration. So that's why we accede to your request, and we would do it by way of CSA. So that's all I want to say. Thank you. I would like to raise a question on 17A2, and I see an interesting point here. The government's original proposal is not more than 12 registered veterinary surgeons, and not more than 6 other persons. And if all of them are appointed, then the ratio is 2:1. Then the government has flexibility. If it appoints only 6 vets, and its ratio is 1:1. Now, Dr. N. Zhang's proposal is 15:15. Well, even if that is written, I mean, the way it is written is like that, then the government can still appoint 6 vets and 6 non-vet members. Now, if Dr. Zhang is very keen about this ratio of 1:1, you should have it written down in black and white. Well, as I said, you can still appoint a ratio of 2:1 in terms of the members. Then that would not go against your legislative intent, or do you still have an open mind to this? Let me try to explain the function of the panel of assessors. It is like a pool of resources for us. We can use them or not use them. Now, say in times when there aren't too many complaints, and that the VSB members are able to deal or cope with the workload, so they can have PIC members and IC members or VSB members. If our amendment gets enacted, then the PIC and IC members are all 3 in number, and 2 are vet, and 1 is non-vet. Now, at certain times when we have a heavy workload, and the PIC and the IC, for the 3 members, 2 can be VSB members and 1 can be from the panel of assessors. So no matter if it's the PIC and IC, that can be done. But the overall framework is this. Is that the composition of the IC and PIC will be 2:1 in the ratio of 2:1 in terms of vets and non-vet members. 17A2, that number, the numbers listed in that section, well, it would just be on the size or the scale of this human resources pool. It can be 12 people or 15 people. Well, if the more people we have, then the more flexible we will be in appointing them. When it actually comes to us appointing an assessor to the IC or PIC, well, only one of them will be appointed to, say, the IC or PIC. So no matter how big the size of the panel of assessors is, every time we just appoint one assessor, and we will be maintaining the ratio, as I mentioned, for the IC and PIC. Now, if our proposal gets accepted, the PIC has to make a unanimous decision before referring a complaint. So that's how it's going to be operating. Mr. Raymond Chen? Well, put simply, Dr. N. Zhang wants everything to be 1-to-1, but the government wants everything to be 2-to-1. So it's not easy to make such a CSA. Well, the 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 ratios have a lot to do with many different sections. So if you want to move a CSA to the effect of having a ratio of 1-to-1, then you have to do a lot of things, other things to the other sections. Now, even if you put this down, when they appoint someone to be on the PIC or IC, then they will still stick to the 2-to-1 ratio. So no matter how big the pool is, say you have 50 vets and 10 non-vets, well, they will still just be appointing according to the ratio specified. In the last meeting, I said this myself too. If the decision is not unanimous, then the case would be referred back to the VSB. The VSB is still in, the composition is still in the ratio of 2-to-1. It has been all along in the case. They're not introducing something new here. What is new this time is that if there isn't a unanimous decision, everything has to be referred back to. And then the original proposal was that there was not an unanimous decision, then it will be voted down. So we are suggesting that that be changed. I think if you want to do a ratio of effective ratio of 1.1, you have to move and CSA, and that's not no easy task at all. I will not ask you not to do it. The paper that you submitted is quite simple, is in a CSA format too. And what we need to do is that when you are done with moving a proper CSA or drafting a proper CSA, then we will deal with it. We all understand what you are saying. Well, then perhaps members can decide when we will deal with your CSA, Ms. Sitho. I really appreciate Dr. N. Zhang for moving this amendment. Well, the amendment can be very complicated because what she's proposing is related to many other sections as well. Now, since Dr. Zhang has raised the point about the number of members, so can the administration go back and see if you would like to change everything from 2-to-1 to 1-to-1? Even if you increase the number of members, that will not be good enough. You will be able to deal with backlogs in handling the complaints and so on, but you will not be resolving the issue on the ratio of vet to non-vet members. Perhaps our legal advisor can help the administration out a bit. I'm sure the legal advisor will help out with Dr. N. Zhang. Well, if we draft the CSA, the legal advisor will help out with fine-tuning it it's the legal advisor has been doing that all along. Well, the DAB has so many resources; they can go back and work on it. Well, we have members from different political affiliations here. How many members truly believe that you would support a ratio of 1-to-1, or you support the administration's proposal of a ratio of 2-to-1? Can we reach some agreement? Because Mr. Stephen Ho said something different from Dr. N. Zhang last time. Well, of course, we agree between ourselves. And Sitho, what about your side? Well, I think I have to go back and discuss with my party members, and also, more importantly, to talk with the people from the sector, because they do have their own worries, I believe. And political parties would have their own political stance, of course, but we do have a duty to lobby people from the sector. And actually, some members who have all along been concerned about animal welfare are not here today. So Chairman, perhaps we should not be trying to reach a consensus here today at today's meeting. Perhaps you should notify members who are not here and ask them to consider the amendment on the ratio, i.e. from 2 to 1 to 1 to 1. I haven't made up my mind yet, Chairman. Do you well, you are suggesting whether we should pocket it first. No, I don't mean that. Of course, 1 to 1 can be considered. If the government is willing to carry out in-depth discussion on that, then that would be good. But I'm sure that the administration will not budge. Well, I haven't made up my mind as to what, where I would object to this present proposal. Well, I will not be able to give you an answer today. Dr. Kenneth Chen. Wow, Chairman, you asked this question, which is very broad, and that is on whether 1 to 1 vis-a-vis 2 to 1. I think if this question is being asked, I think we have to consider afresh the proposal, because VSB is not there to deal with complaints. They have it has a lot of other duties, and if the ratio of 1 to 1 is being proposed, I think we have to take a more macro view, the duties and other duties and functions of the VSB. We have to take heed of the views not only of the animal lovers. We also have to consider the development of the profession as a whole, the business landscape, and so on. So I think that goes far beyond what we try to achieve here. So when we started out discussing the amendment regulation, we sort of focused on the complainant's perspective, and I think up to now, I think we've been able to achieve a balance between the complainant and the complainee, and how to cut down on the fact that the vets will be protecting themselves only. And then if we want to change this fundamental ratio of 2 to 1 to 1 to 1, we have to go back and look at everything from the scratch again. So if we want to do that, I don't know whether this is in line with the objective of the amending the regulation. I think the legal advisor has to take a look at this side as well. From the from the perspective of the complaint mechanism and enhancing the representativeness of the profession, from these two perspectives, and if these are the objectives of the amendment bill, then I don't see why we should go back to arguing or discussing this ratio of 2 to 1 versus 1 to 1. So, administration, I think you have heard members' views here. I will defer to the colleagues to see how we should take this forward. This is a fundamental issue that we're dealing with, and a member has suggested whether we should go back and ask all the stakeholders involved on whether we should have 1 to 1 instead of 2 to 1. Should we hold another public hearing? Should we, before we move the amendments? I think the bill is not that urgent, isn't it? Dr. N. Chang, we raised many of our worries, and that is number one, the vets would be electing among themselves some board members to the members to the VSB, and we would be clear that the vets elected will do more to defend or uphold the vet's interest. I think that's a point very clear. I have to make this very clear too, because in the future, the vets and the VSB will have a lot of conflicts with the pet owners. Why I'm so concerned about this, Chairman? I hope that members can heed my views.
We are now not dealing with other legal questions But we're talking about the lives of animals here. We're talking about something which involves the lives of animals. Right now, many of the animals' rights are being ignored. Some pets, could die for no reason. Some pet owners are charged very expensive fees for certain operations, and then a few hours later, the pets would die. And if the operation had not been performed, the pet might have survived, actually. Right now, the VSP has not yet accepted any such complaints. Now, if that's the case, I think the development of the veterinary surgeon profession is not going to be very healthy. So I hope that our complaints mechanism can ensure that we can have this 1-to-1 ratio, so that there could be one, vet versus one lay member, or two non-vet members versus one vet member. I've talked to the administration many times about this issue, but the government has not been able to give us any reason as to why they should maintain the ratio of 2 vets vis-a-vis 1 lay member. Because the vet surgeons normally would understand the procedure, and once they see a case, they can judge whether the vet concerned is in the wrong or not. But whereas the lay members may not have such expertise. However, even in the coroner's court, when we talk about the death of a human being, and when we want to find out the cause of death of a certain person, you have a jury of 5 members, and not all of them are not doctors. That's why I'm saying that in this appeals mechanism, you cannot allow 2 non-vet members and 1 vet member. So the government is saying that this is not possible, but the government has not been able to convince me why this will not work. Right at the beginning, we talk about the members will need to be elected among the veterinary surgeons. The government again has not been able to convince me why that has to be the case. So why should I support your proposal? I only know that I have received many complaints. That is the pet owners. And very often the complaint has been lodged for years, several years, and still the hearing had not yet been scheduled. The pet owners sometimes have waited for so long that they don't want to go through the whole ordeal again. So I think the hearing should be arranged more expeditiously, and that the board must comprise of 2 non-vet members and 1 vet member. And if the government is not willing to concede to that, at least there should be a ratio 1-to-1. But you're now insisting that there must be 2 vets versus 1 non-vet members. Why are you insisting on this? The only reason is because at least half of the representatives from the administration are vet surgeons. So you're actually, defending your own interests. And if anything should go wrong, you will be sitting in judgment of your own peers. We all know about what happened to the medical council. Last year, there was a case, a very well-publicized case, and that case has been prolonged for many years before the victim was able to get the justice they sought, and it's all because they were well-known celebrities. The lives of many animals could have been, lost in vain. And we don't know the reason for that. Why are you insisting that there must be 2 vets versus 1 lay member? You're not able to give me a reason as to why we should support your proposal. So how can we give you our support? I think you need to respect the general public. You don't need to come forward and stand for election. You don't need to face the public. But we do, all of us do here. We also need to be accountable to the profession and also to the general public. Right now, the vets are now charging fees, which are so expensive that many senior citizens simply cannot afford to pay the fees. So this time, I think we really need to put up a fight. There need to be at least a ratio of 1-to-1. If you don't have a ratio of 2-to-1 at the PIC level, and if there is no unanimous decision, the complaint will refer back to the board. If that's the case, why don't you take my suggestion and maintain a ratio of 1-to-1 at the VSP level? That is only fair. So let's think about this. I hope, if you say that you are not going to concede, and I've also consulted with many members, and many of them think that if the government is insisting, on its position, then it's not fair or reasonable. You're simply protecting the profession. And if what you're proposing is not unreasonable, I don't think we can give you our support. Even those members from the pan-democratic camp, I don't think there's any reason for them to give you the support. You owe it to the general public. Even if the few members who support the protection of animal rights, they're not here today, and even if they were here, they wouldn't give you the support. You can lobby them for the support, of course. You can certainly do that. But anyway, I myself and members of the DAB will not be able to give you our support if you refuse to make that amendment. Any response from the administration? I think the 2-to-1 ratio had already been, I think we've already heard the views of the profession regarding the 2-to-1 ratio. I think we've all heard about the position. I remember that at the first and second meetings of the committee, the profession had actually come to express the views. The government has already struck a balance between the interests of the profession and that of the public. Ms. Chiang also gave the example of the coroner's court. But actually, in the coroner's court, the court's function is to find out the cause of death of a person, whereas if we talk about the integrity of veterinary surgeons, that is a separate issue. The approach now is that I think we're now talking about the professional ethics of people in a particular profession, and in deciding whether or not there has been any case of professional negligence. And if you look at the other professional bodies, when they have to make such a decision, usually the views of those from the profession itself will be given, a higher weighting compared with those who are not members of that profession. So I think we need to maintain a cautious balance here. And our colleagues have already explained that putting aside the question of fees and charges, whether a matter touches on a matter of professional negligence, the judgment of those from the profession is very important. So, bearing that in mind, I'm afraid that regarding the ratio of vet members on the non-vet members on the VSP, I must reiterate once again that we want to maintain the current ratio, namely the 2-to-1 ratio. As for the handling of complaints, We understand Ms. Cheng's views, and under the circumstances, we have accepted the proposal made last time by members and have introduced a measure so that at the PIC, the views of the non-vet members will be fully taken into consideration. I hope Ms. Cheng can rest assured that procedurally the views of the non-vet member will be fully taken on board. We would like to have a proper balance so that while ensuring the development of the profession, we want to ensure that complaints are handled impartially and fairly. Chairman, last time you talked about the benefits of the 2-to-1 ratio, but now you've made an amendment and you say that the VSP must make a unanimous decision, otherwise the complaint will be referred back to the VSP. But the ratio for the VSP is 2-to-1. So you arrive at the same outcome. And if that's the case, now listen carefully, Mr. Permanent Secretary. Now, first of all, the government's power to make appointment has not been diminished, and you now have the mechanism for vets to elect among themselves members to the VSP. In Section 5(3)(a)(2), I'm proposing an amendment. I'm saying that in the past the Secretary appoints 6 vets. Now the 6 vets members are to be appointed among the vets themselves. So what I'm suggesting is that the Secretary can appoint 6 members, 3 of whom could be vets. The other 3, just appoint those 3 members who are non-vet members. Are you unwilling to even, allocate just 3 seats on the VSP to non-vet members? You said that if you have more representatives from the profession, then they can, closely monitor the development of the profession. But even the profession itself needs to be regulated. Even for the publishing industry or the newspaper industry, the review committee, we have half of our members from the profession, the other half are not. We've seen some professional bodies in the past which actually operate behind closed doors, and that's why we believe that that you need to operate in a more transparent manner. We attach so much importance to the VSP, whereas for professions like the accountants, I think they're in the business world, but for the vets, the veterinary surgeon's duty is to serve the general public. There are 400,000 vets in Hong Kong, and they have to be responsible for the lives of these vets. If you appoint more non-vet members to monitor the profession, just in case the vet, provide the wrong treatment and the pet dies, at least you have a mechanism to find out the reason. And at least you should allow the pet owners, a chance to lodge the complaints. People now are complaining. People are very angry because there's no way for them to take the complaints to. We're not causing trouble for you. We just want you to, add 3 more, seats to non-vet members sitting on the board. Otherwise, you may as well ensure that all members of the VIP are veterinary surgeons, and let the vets make all the decisions, and you can simply abolish the complaint mechanism. Chairman, on the question of complaints, well, I don't think we should, get personal when directing our questions. I don't think you may not agree with Ms. Zhang. So,
Chairman, I just want to explain that the VSB attaches a lot of importance to complaint handling. And the problem in the past is that there's been an increasing number of complaints, and because of manpower constraints, the complaints take we take a long time to deal with the complaints. And for the amendment this time, we want to increase the number of members to the board and also streamline procedures so then we can deal with complaints more expeditiously to meet with public aspirations. And one of the major recommendations is to increase the manpower and also to streamline procedures. So these are the directions that we are working on. I appreciate the members' concern and request. And Dr. N. Zhang, well, I am getting impatient now, Dr. N. Zhang. Well, let me suggest this. Perhaps the administration can consider again my suggestion of having 3 more seats for the non-lay members. Well, if needed, we can hold another public hearing. Yes. Let me try to wrap up. I've asked colleagues, but then it seems that we don't have any mainstream view. And for prudence sake, we should hold another meeting, and we have a time slot for 4:45 a.m. 26th of January. We have available room 3, and some other members have to attend another meeting related to the Chinese medicine, chaired by Alice Mack. We can invite some deputations to come along, and members, you can choose which meeting you attend. And next Tuesday, on the 20th of January, there is another vacant time slot. But if we are to invite deputations to come, then we may not be, the notice period would be too short. So I now decide on the 26th of January, and we'll invite the deputations to this meeting. And Mr. Stephen Ho, Dr. N. Zhang, do you object to that date? Because you have a clash of meetings on that date. 26th of January. What time? 10:45 a.m. You should have a clash of meeting with the economic development panel. Well, I think that should be okay. Well, then I make a decision. A meeting for the 26th of January. So it will be 2 weeks off. And Dr. N. Zhang, perhaps I would ask you to ask your assistant to look through the entire piece of legislation and see which parts needed amendment if we want to move an amendment of a ratio 1:1. Now, if you can submit those by the 23rd of January, Friday, then we can take a look before the meeting on the 26th of January. And we can also notify other members who want to move CSAs that they should do so immediately. So I hope that after we hear views from the deputations on the 26th of January, we can deal with the CSAs of members, and then thereafter we can decide on the date for the second reading and the third reading. Any further views, members? If not, then we'll have a meeting at on the 26th of January, 10:45 a.m. at room 3. Then we will send a notice to the deputations, and if you have CSAs, please submit them before the 23rd of January. Of course, the earlier the better. Dr. Kenneth Chen. Please bear with me, Chairman. What is the theme of the public hearing? I think on this amendment bill, we have already held a public hearing. The theme or the subject matter is rather simple, and that is that the VSB's composition, should it adopt a ratio of 1:1 or 2:1? Well, I think we should be more focused. Well, thank you. You are right in raising that question. I don't think we should go back to issues like elections and appointments and so on. Should all the 9 members be elected, or should all of them be appointed, and so on? I think we should have a more focused discussion, and that is a deputations from the sector or those not from the sector to give their views on whether there should be a 2:1 or 1:1 ratio for the VSB composition. And also, the deputations can also give views on, say, if the ratio is going to be changed, how it will affect the development of the trade. Will there be impact on the registration? Will vets from other jurisdictions be allowed to operate in Hong Kong and so on? Well, Hong Kong doesn't have any vet training. No university is offering that. And I think that is something different from the medical practitioners field, in which they've been discussing on whether overseas doctors should be allowed to practice in Hong Kong. And I think we should have a more focused discussion. We should narrow down on the subject matter, and that is whether we should have 2:1 or 1:1 ratio in VSB composition. And members, if you have any CSAs, please submit them. And then after we're finished with the deputations, then we can talk and discuss how we deal with your CSAs. And perhaps you could go back and discuss with your parties, the vets, the animal lovers, the pet owners, well, seek their views on this. Do you want the chairman of the Bills Committee to move the CSA, or you yourselves to do it? Then we can discuss that. Well, administration, anything further from you? No? Then we'll meet again on the 26th of January then. AOB. Well, we'll talk about second reading after the 26th of January. Well, the only date available for the second reading is the 18th of March. So after today, we will have more time to deal with the matter. Thank you.